part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The 1-1 pitch. A swing and a drive to deep right. Away back. Goal!
Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast. I'm your slightly ailing host, Mr. John Telich. Good to be on board with you. I would love to say it's great to be on board with the Guardians in the last couple of weeks since we last spoke with you, but it has been absolutely a nightmare scenario for the franchise. They seem to be reeling in the last week or so and find themselves with a lot of distance to climb if they want to think about any opportunities at all to be a playoff team. It just doesn't look like it's in the cards this year. When we spoke with you last on July the 26th, they were hovering close to first place in the division, and certainly things were on the up. But we knew that the trade deadline was looming. We just didn't know how much they would be busy in terms of making deals. And since we talked to you last, they did make 3 trades in advance of and also at the trade deadline when they traded away Rosario, Savali, and Josh Bell. I would imagine if Bieber and Tristan McKenzie were not injured, you would not have seen a scenario where Savali was traded away. But that's what they did. They got some kids. You just hope that they can develop for the Guardians, but they are not any guarantees at all. They got no hit. That's another thing that happened since the last time I spoke with you. At Houston, as the Astros put the goose eggs on the offensive bats on that night, they lost their second best hitter in Josh Naylor to an oblique strain, and they're saying that was 3 to 6 weeks initially. We'll wait and see how he comes in his rehab, and you wonder with the weeks ticking down, the end of the season coming closer and closer, just how aggressive they're going to be to try to get him back. You just don't know. He is a vital cog to the machine going forward, so they may change how they approach this. We will see. And they certainly didn't take any advantage of a lesser schedule, at least the tail end of the lesser schedule part of their campaign, when they went to Chicago for 4 games and only split with the lowly White Sox. Then they were swept in Houston by the Astros, including that night when no one on the team got hit, was no hit by the Houston Astros. Then they lost 2 of 3 at home against the White Sox, with the biggest story, of course, Saturday night when Jose Ramirez and Tim Anderson squared off, and Jose Ramirez single-handedly is boosting the bottom line for some of those T-shirt selling companies in Northeast Ohio. There's T-shirts out there that say "Down Goes Anderson," and he did KO Tim Anderson. And then, of course, both guys got KO'd by Major League Baseball in terms of the suspensions that were handed down after that melee. Of course, Tito got a game. Sarbaugh got a suspension. You had Ramirez with his 3-game suspension, which he will be appealing that. So he was in the lineup on Monday night and went 1 for 4, I believe. And the big culprit, of course, Tim Anderson, got a 6-game suspension by Major League Baseball. In Game 1 of the series on Monday night against the Blue Jays, their young pitcher Gavin Williams was absolutely spectacular. He fanned 12 batters over 7 innings in a 3-1 loss. He gave up 1 hit over the 7 innings, and he had an outstanding time on the hill. But then in the 8th inning, the relief corps gave up a 2-run shot, and that basically was all she wrote for the Guardians in losing by a 3-1 count against the Toronto Blue Jays. And Ramirez, of course, going to hold out in terms of he'll be appealing the suspension, so we'll see what happens as that moves forward. Tito was out on Monday night. So as we sit here right now, they are 54-59, 5.5 games out in the division. And, of course, up next, they'll be on the road. I thought it would be cool to bring in my buddy Adam the Bull, who has his own podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network called Up Next, where he talks about television trends, what's happening in the streaming world, all those types of things. We're going to talk Guardians baseball and a little bit of streaming television as well. So without any further ado, my buddy, Adam the Bull. I'm happy to be joined by Adam the Bull, longtime Cleveland sports broadcaster and also a member of our Press Play podcast team. Adam, so great to have you on the show. We're kind of going to do a couple of things today. We're going to do, obviously, Guardians, and then talk about one or two of the current shows that are out there as we speak. What's your overall assessment at this point in the season for the Cleveland Guardians, Adam?
Yeah, John, before I answer that, it is a complete pleasure to be on with you. You're one of my favorite people in town, without a doubt. For those who don't know, I've told this story on my platforms, but I want to tell it really quick on your platform. We lost power at my house, I think it was 2 summers ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Right. And it was like, and I was complaining about it on Twitter, as people do these days. Right. Sure, and John calls me up and invited me to stay at his house. Like, John and I know each other, but we don't know each other that well. And it was just such a kind gesture that it really blew me away. So I share that. And everybody's got a nice story to tell about you. Jay Crawford has told us a bunch of stories. Anyway, you're the best. And it's my honor to be on with you.
You're a beautiful guy. I appreciate that very, very much. And flattery will get you everywhere, but it won't get you the playoffs with the Cleveland Guardians.
No.
What's going on with those guys?
Well, it's frustrating. And what's really frustrating, John, is attendance is up around Major League Baseball. It's the best attendance in 25 years. And it was up here in Cleveland. I mean, the attendance lately has been, even this weekend, after they traded away guys, the attendance was still great. Now, I'm sure that'll tail off as we go into August and September because the team's going to be out of it. But it felt like there was really some momentum coming off a surprise year last year where nobody expected them to make the playoffs. I know I didn't. And they had a great year. They were 1 win away from beating the stinking Yankees. So close in that AL DS. And you locked up Ramirez. You locked up Jimenez. For the first time in a while, it was like, okay, maybe we can keep at least some of our guys. And this year's been a disaster. From Josh Bell, which was a bad signing, Mike Zunino, a bad signing. They've been talking for 2 years about let's trade some prospect depth to get some proven players. They failed to do that. And I think there's a sentiment among some diehard Guardians fans that you can't criticize Mike Chernoff and Chris Antonetti or Terry Francona because they're really good. And they are. Nobody's debating that. Terry Francona is one of, if not the best manager in baseball. The Guardians front office is one of, if not the best front office. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. We all do, no matter how good we are at our job. And it's not been a great year for the front office. And frankly, it's not been a great year for Francona. I don't want to fire anybody. I'm just saying we have to acknowledge it's not been their best year, and it's frustrating. And then for it to come all down to the trade deadline. And I get it. If I take out the emotions, I get what the Guardians did. They were not a very good team. The only reason they were in it is because their division is just historically bad. But it's not. It can't just be about dollars and cents and non-emotion all the time. The fans were into it. The team believed that they could find a way, and they were 1 game out or half a game out, whatever it was at the deadline. So it's disappointing they did what they did. We'll find out in the long run if it was the right move, if this kid they got in the Savali trade, and turns out to be good, and they might not have made the playoffs anyway. And even if they did, they probably wouldn't have made a big run. But in the American League, that feels kind of wide open. Baltimore, I don't believe in their pitching. Tampa Bay, after their great start, hasn't been great. I know I'm very long-winded here, John, but I just feel the frustration and the pain from the fans, and I felt like things were trending well, and now they've kind of hit a wall.
They really haven't taken advantage of, you alluded to, Bull, the increased attendance, which has been spectacular this year. They haven't taken advantage of that. And then at the trade deadline, they did what I kind of thought that they would do. They would, you couldn't trade Bieber, obviously. And yet they just wanted to make sure they got as much as they could for Savali, knowing that Gavin Williams and Bybee and Logan Allen and Espino, if he's ever healthy, those guys are their rotation in the future. So I kind of got that, but I'm really frustrated, Bull, because there's been so much interest in the team at the ballpark this year versus we know they have good numbers, but Bally Sports and Andre Knott and those guys, they get great numbers when they do the games. But I think they missed something here. And you could say, okay, they do what you can to maybe get in the playoffs. You never know, you get in the playoffs. But I just have a real down feeling about them right now. And I'm normally not that way. It's a strange situation.
Yeah, we had Tom Hamilton on, another legend in this town who was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's great.
And the fight he called with Jose and Tim Anderson was amazing. And, he said, hey, if McKenzie and Bieber hadn't gotten hurt, they probably wouldn't have gone this direction. And I get it. And there's a lot to be excited about in terms of the pitching next year. I mean, hopefully McKenzie doesn't have to eventually have Tommy John surgery. And I think they're going to trade Bieber this offseason. But a top three in the rotation, if healthy, of McKenzie, Williams, and Bibee, is pretty fun to think about.
Yeah.
But in the end, John, this lineup, I mean, it is painful. We know, and if you're Jose Ramirez, who is as good a team guy as we've ever had on this team, right? It's all he left $100 million on the table. I mean, I don't know how much he left, but it was more than I've ever seen a baseball player leave on the forget baseball player, more than I've ever seen a professional athlete leave on the table. What Jose Ramirez did, right? And he made a commitment to this team, and I would think that part of that was, hey, maybe you have some money to do other things around me, and they haven't spent. And I have a big beef with ownership for not. This offseason is big. You got David Blitzer in the mix now. I would hope he has inject some financial help. If the Dolans can't do it, I don't know what the truth is. I never believe a billionaire when they say they can't spend money. But the lineup has to be added to. It's just there's so few guys. We've been hearing about these prospects, but to this point, again, it's way too early on Naylor and Rocchio and even Arias and all these guys. But none of them have really stood out. Naylor's been great. Ramirez has been great, of course. Kwan's an everyday player, but he has no power. And after that, and Jimenez, had a bad season, but obviously he's in the everyday lineup. The rest of the lineup, there's so many question marks, and it's so frustrating.
As good as those guys are, and I'm talking about Chernoff and Antonetti, but they have had an Achilles heel in those veteran free agent signings. You just, of course, noted our most recent ones, Zunino and Bell, but you could go back to was it Michael Bourne? Was it Michael Bourne?
Bourne and Swisher, you got it.
Yeah, Bourne and Swish. Bourne and Swish. Back in 2013, the first year for Tito. So they're good in many instances, and I give them a lot of credit for what they've been innovative. And a lot of their executives end up on other clubs, and that's all well and good, but. You just hope that this Blitzer guy's got a little bit of Bobby Axelrod or Michael Prince, that money that'll just kind of flow down.
Final season coming up. Well,
I want to get to that. I mean, I just finished watching the season, setting up the new season coming up, I think on the 11th, isn't that? Yeah. That's the first episode coming up on the next one. And I just found that really fascinating. We'll get to the TV stuff in a second. Yeah. I think the biggest key last year, Adam, was they had so much health. And I think, sometimes you can lull yourself into a false sense of security when you've got guys like Bieber making every start. And then, all the guys in the top of the rotation were pretty reliable a year ago. And then this year, they don't even play a game. And you got Tristan with his thing and so on and so forth. And I think that, it's very difficult. But what I love to do is to see these young kids pitch. And I know that you're going to see the kid pitch like Gavin Williams for so many years. And then if the model is still the same model that we've had for in the Dolan era, you're not going to see Gavin Williams, for the extended period of his career. I really like what this kid does. I just love how he is out on mound.
And think about that last night. I mean, that was against a really good Toronto lineup. I mean, that's not the Tigers or the White Sox. I mean, the Blue Jays are legit, especially offensively. And that was a brilliant performance. Now, I don't care about wins in terms of wins doesn't prove who's a good pitcher, who's not. We know that. But still, if you're him, you got to be like, man, I can't pitch better than that. And they got me one hit. I mean, that really stinks. But yeah, watching him pitch, and he's just coming into his own, right? I mean, he's such a young guy. He has so little experience at the higher levels. And you mentioned Espino before. He's had major injury problems. If he could ever stay healthy, he was supposed to be the best of them all.
Yeah.
Originally. Yeah. But I don't know how Williams made it. He's got such good stuff. And he was, I mean, it was beautiful to watch what he did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the hitting's painful to watch.
He puts on a clinic, and I think, pitching coach can just come and say to him, you are a rookie and all that, but give yourself some credit. I mean, don't give them too much credit.
Right.
They're all major leaguers. They all fail 7 times out of 10 or even more. So, get with it, and put the ball over the plate, and don't pitch everything with a fine tooth comb, or you're going to get yourself.
Yeah. To your point, John, I think you nailed it right there. Young pitchers getting over that hump of, I got to hit that perfect spot all the time. Yeah. That's a hurdle that a young pitcher has to get over, instead of just saying, hey, I'm a badass. I got great stuff here. I'm going to just challenge all these guys.
Yeah, I think that's a good point on him. He's fun to watch. So is Bybee. I think, Logan Allen, we saw what he did when he went to Boston, and he put on a nice little clinic on a Saturday night, misty kind of a Saturday night. So there's something there. It's fun to watch. I'm enjoying my conversation with Adam the Bull. We're going to take a quick break here on the Press Play Podcast Network, and then come back with more Adam the Bull on the Guardians, and also on streaming TV, the show Silo. I can't wait to get into that. We're going to take a break. We'll see you guys in a couple minutes.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Back with Adam the Bull, and we are talking Guardians. We'll also get into some of the aspects of what he does on his podcast for Press Play. Of course, that's the Up Next, and that show talks about all the things that are cool in the television realm today. Boy, that's a shifting landscape, if there ever was one, to say the least. Yeah. Adam, as we move down the rest of the schedule for the Guardians, it's tougher for them. And I think being 5.5 out as we sit here on a Tuesday afternoon and conduct this interview, with their schedule getting tougher, and then Minnesota's not as tough. I really think it's the Sisyphus pushing that giant boulder up the hill, and I don't know if they can get to the top.
No, anything's always possible, but at this point now, 5.5 out, and at some point you wonder, are they going to pull back on some of these young pitchers who have thrown more innings than they ever have, right? So
right.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in September. Do they go to some sort of 6-man rotation? Do they start pulling them out after 4 innings? They're always so careful with these pitchers. Jose's, Naylor's hurt. Jose's going to be eventually have to sit out this 3-game suspension. Without the two of them in the lineup, I don't know how they score at all. So I can't see it. They'd have to play at such a great clip the rest of the year. And we're not used to this, because since Francona's here, the worst record I think they had was 80-82, which is just not used to them being bad. And I think that's what we're going to get a taste of. I think they're going to be pretty bad. They'll have some moments because the pitching will still be good at times, but they'll be as bad an offensive team as there is in the league probably in the last 7 weeks.
I 100% agree with your assessment there. I hope you don't mind my Springer Spaniel is greeting people out in the street.
No, that's all right. My dog is always barking at the other dogs too.
So I apologize for that, but that's okay. This is podcasting 101, and I've always enjoyed doing the conversations. The Guardians, obviously their day-to-day talent, if you take away, as you mentioned, Jose and Josh, what are your honest impressions so far of Bo? And then of some of the other kids that you did say Rocchio real quick, but let's just talk specifically about Bo Naylor. You think he's got what it takes?
I do. I like the potential there. Obviously, he hasn't been up enough to have any kind of full assessment. I like what I've seen both offensively and defensively. And I think that's always impressive when a young catcher is good at throwing out runners and just has a good presence behind the plate. He seems to have it. That position has been an issue for a while, since Gomes and Perez were the combo back there. Gomes, who oddly enough is having a great season for the Cubs after he hadn't done much the last couple of years. But, those guys were like a solid combo behind there. But I think he's got a lot of potential. In terms of some of the other guys, again, too early, but Gabriel Arias, I just don't see it. I have been unimpressed. He looks completely lost at the plate to me. Again, I want to see another couple hundred at bats, at least. But a lot of these prospects, their lights aren't as bright as they were, and it felt like they wouldn't trade any of these guys. And now, Rocchio, we just haven't seen enough. I mean, he just came up, so I'm not sure about him. The kid they got in the trade for Savali, I can't think of his name right now, the first base prospect.
Oh, that's Mazzardo.
Right, Mazzardo. Right. They're high on him, but I feel like I'm a little skeptical now with everybody they bring up, because they just haven't developed the hitters, and they certainly have not developed power. And I think free agency is a must this offseason. They've got to go spend legitimate money. I want them to get 2 legitimate power hitters, one in free agency and then one via trade, and whatever it takes. But they got to add 2 legitimate bats to the lineup to go with some of these young guys. Miles Straw, I've had a long-running feud with him. Well, I don't think he knows I have this feud, but I'm done with him. He can't play. He's not a starting player to me. He can't hit. I know he's good defensively, but most guys that play center field are good defensively. I'll take a slight downgrade defensively to have a guy who can hit. Hasn't hit a home run in 2 years. You can't. Their outfield combined has 10 home runs, 12 home runs on the season. I mean, it's just not tenable. You can't win that way in the big leagues anymore.
No, you really can't, Adam. And then, but again, each year you're blessed with the division, that doggone division that they're in.
Gives you a chance,
and you sit back and you say, it gives you a shot. It gives you an opportunity. If you start a little bit slow and you just get hot at some certain point in the season, you win 9 out of 11, and then you lose a couple, and then all of a sudden you win 7 out of 9, and you're almost running away with the thing, like they did last year at that one point in the season where it looked bad. Looked like Jose was going to be shut down with his hand. He plays the whole year anyway because he's an Iron Man. He's a freak.
Yeah,
I love him. But then he does what he does, and then they all just kind of take off from there.
Yeah, and to your point, John, I mean, obviously Kansas City had that great run. They won the World Series, but since then, they've been awful. We've been hearing for a couple of years that Kansas City and Detroit are getting better. I'm not seeing it. I mean, Detroit, they got some guys in the lineup I like, but I don't. Their pitching is nothing, and Kansas City's got no pitching. They're terrible. The White Sox, as we all know, I don't care about their talent. They have some talent. They're a disaster. We all know they have no chemistry. It feels like just going into the year, that Minnesota is the only competition, that they're the only other team in this division that's trying to win it all. And so it feels like a 2-team race every year.
It really does seem like that. Hey, let's go back into your past. Where did you develop your passion for baseball? How did that manifest itself, if you will?
New York and Cleveland are very different. Now, maybe it was more similar in those days. Obviously, I was born in 1971, so I think of my formative years for sports were like 77 to 84, 85, right? And in Brooklyn, where I grew up, baseball was the number one sport, and it wasn't close.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was it. Now, I bet in New York now, football has caught up to baseball, but not like here, where football is king and probably always has been. But I didn't know a single person that didn't love baseball. Every one of my friends was a diehard baseball fan. We collected baseball cards. We went to the park. We didn't have to be organized by adults. We just went to the park and played baseball all the time, every day. And if we weren't playing baseball, we were playing stickball, or we invented a game called whack-it-ball, which was basically baseball with self-pitching and a tennis racket and a tennis ball with baseball rules.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and you just make up all these games. My dad was a huge baseball fan. He was, when he was a kid, he was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. But when the Dodgers left Brooklyn, he did not wait for the Mets to come in, because obviously there was time between that.
Yeah, there was
Dodgers leaving and the Mets coming in. So he liked Ernie Banks a lot when he was a kid. So he became a Cubs fan. And that's how it's so funny because when I moved to Cleveland in 2011, I was like, I remember Boomer Esiason saying to me, because Boomer was working at the Fan in New York, and I had been working there part-time. And Boomer said to me, "Are you going to tell them you're a Cubs and Bengals fan?" I said, "When you go on in Cleveland, you're going to tell them you're a Cubs and Bengals fan?" I said, "Yeah, of course. I'm going to be honest about it." Yeah. And I knew coming here that being a Bengals fan, that some people would be annoyed by that. But I never thought the Cubs would be an issue because it felt like the Cubs and the Indians were like brothers in crime. Like,
right.
Right. I feel like if the Cubs had played anybody else in the World Series that year besides the Indians, I feel like everybody here would have rooted for the Cubs and vice versa. I'm sure all Cubs fans, I know, I root for the Guardians when they play anybody but the Cubs. But I'm sure a lot of Cubs fans would have rooted for the Indians if they had played anybody else but the Cubs. Unfortunately, they played each other. And so that made for an awkward thing. But I just grew up. I played Little League and I played baseball all the time. And my dad loved baseball. And, I couldn't watch the Cubs a lot as a kid because I don't even know if there was cable when I was a kid, but I certainly didn't have it. And so I just watched the Mets and Yankees. I'd listen to Harry Callis, who was the Phillies play-by-play guy on the radio, and the Mets radio broadcasters and the Yankees radio broadcasters. But I preferred National League Baseball when I was a kid. And so that's it. You'd have the game of the week and then eventually George Michael Sports Machine. And we used to have this thing called Sports Phone where you'd call and get the scores. and that was it. I mean, there was obviously no internet, no cable. So, but I would watch, I couldn't get enough baseball. And in those days, unlike now, you couldn't watch every game, certainly. So, it's always been a huge passion.
Do you think sports has taken the mystical wonderment of it all away from kids because they can see everything all at once at the drop of a touch of a button on their phone?
Some degree,
like the mystery of it all. I wonder what those Yankees look like. You just don't see them as often, and you're mystified by them.
No doubt. And it's so I feel like going to a game when I was a kid was such a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. And probably for some people it is, but I'm sure you had this experience, John, when you went to see the Indians for the first time. I remember going to Shea Stadium for the first time. It was 1977. I was 6 years old, and the Mets were playing the Cubs, and both teams were terrible. I think they finished last and second to last in the NL East in those years. But I remember walking up the tunnel and smelling the grass for the first time.
Yeah.
I can still smell it almost 50 years later. It was I was like, oh my God, I'm at a baseball stadium. It was like the most incredible thing. I wonder if I guess kids maybe still have that experience, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it because you're consuming so much nowadays. Yeah. That maybe not.
I think when kids craft their own, like everything's kind of manufactured today. Yeah. You sit down, you play a video game. If you're into that sort of thing, it's all there in front of you. And so, there's not much is left to chance in terms of your imagination running amok and your feelings towards something that you don't actually see. And I think that's how it was when we were kids. You played games, you'd make believe games, obviously kick the can and kill the man with the ball and all those types of games.
Yeah.
And there was a wonderment to what you were doing out on the street. Street lights come on, you got to get home, all those types of things. And so much more is now in front of a young I feel bad in some ways for some of the kids today, because so much is there's the world is coming to them in this little portal that they hold in their hands, but yet they're not experiencing the world. We see so many sporting events now where the greatest, LeBron James breaks the scoring record, and every person in that place, except for maybe the owner of the team, has got a cell phone in their hands. And it's like, can we just enjoy the moment for what it is? It's a fine line we kind of walk it in, being mystified by sports as they're going on, or just wanting it to get a picture of it or a little video that we could post on our platforms. It's crazy.
It's funny because a couple weeks ago, a massive Billy Joel is my favorite singer. I've been a huge fan my whole life, and I've gotten my son into Billy Joel.
Oh, that's cool.
A couple weeks ago, he and I flew into New Jersey, stayed with my sister, and I took him to a Billy Joel concert at Madison Square Garden for the first time. He was very excited about this. It was his first concert, and I've seen Billy Joel a few times. The first time I saw Billy Joel, I was 15, It was actually during the World Series between the Mets and Red Sox. We were at, my friend and I, who was a big Met fan, were at Madison Square Garden to see him. And when we went to this concert a couple of weeks ago, the reason I bring it up is because whether it's sports or whatever, as Billy Joel started the concert, everybody had their phones out. And I was so annoyed by that. I'm like, what are you going to do? Are you going to go home and watch the concert again? Or like, I don't understand. But I feel like you're so not in the moment if you're standing there. Like, I took a couple of pictures as the night went along, but 99.9% of the time I was just into the concert. There were some people that had their phones out almost the entire time, if not the entire time. And it's like, seems crazy to me.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody can watch, TV shows, excuse me, on their cell phones or on their mini iPads or all the small little devices. So the way we consume this stuff is so different than how we used to consume it. Of course, it was appointment viewing when I was a little boy. Hey, a colored television. We have to go to Mr. Laporte's house and he's going to make popcorn for us. And, wear your pajamas and you can watch the wide world of color on Disney on Sunday night. And then, that was a big deal for you. And so, obviously eras come, eras go. And what we have now, if I can make the bridge now to our a little bit to talk about what you do on your pod for TV.
Yeah.
I think that this is just a phenomenal era to see stuff on streaming services and or network television. You too?
100%. I mean, I think about all the shows. Like, I don't watch anything. I don't watch any network TV shows. Like, I watch sports or news or whatever. But in terms of sitcoms and dramas that are on network, to me, it's also cheesy on the networks, in my opinion. And the best stuff is on streaming, like HBO, Showtime, Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Disney. These are where the best shows. This is where the creativity is great now, as they do in every other industry. Certainly, I won't speak for you, John, but I'll say in our industry, TV, radio, whatever. Usually the suits find a way to screw things up.
Oh, yeah.
And they're kind of trying to do that now. We got these strikes going on with the actors union, with the writers union, because they're trying to take advantage of them. I know people are not going to feel bad for the top actors, but the rank and file actors are not rich. You think of Matt Damon, and the rank and file actor is make living paycheck to paycheck, if that much.
Waiting tables.
Yeah. And so, these are important things. I think we all should be pro union. But anyway, maybe they're going to cut back because there's just been so much content, and maybe people who are cutting the cord are now going to cut the streaming cord. But there's so much good stuff right now. I mean, I can't believe how much TV I watch. I don't know how I have the time between watching sports and my family. I stay up late a lot of nights, but what they're doing, I feel like The Sopranos kind of opened the door to this.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is different than anything. Maybe even before that with Oz on HBO. Did you watch Oz back in the day?
I did not. And I came upon it not as it was coming upon us, but I was late to the party on that. The first show that I really, I guess the word binge comes to, first show that I binged, and I did it by going to Apple TV and buying the episodes, was Breaking Bad. So, Adam, that's only 9-10 years ago. This is like 2013, 2014. And I'm, I'm in season 3 of Breaking Bad. I can't wait for the next. So I go and buy for another however much each episode was. And I download it and I'd watch it. And now it's like, if a show comes on and there's 10 episodes, I can suck that sucker down in 3 days easy. And I love it.
On the shows that you have to wait for a week, it's like maddening at this point. Especially because you think about it, it used to be on the network TV shows, they were longer seasons.
Yes.
And so when a show ended in whatever April or whenever it ends, like, it'd be back in September. You wouldn't have to wait that long for it to come back. But now these shows you love, and if you've
gone a year,
and in some cases 2 years, depending on the show. And it's especially between COVID and now these strikes that have backed everything up. But you got to wait so long. So I mean, I don't know if it's healthy that we're all binging all this stuff all the time, but and I mean, it's so much fun. I think the first thing I binged watched was Dexter. Which was on Showtime, and then Breaking Bad was also one of my first ones that I binged watched as well. And now, like I said, like, there are certain shows that still come out once a week, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I have to wait.
You know that Bill Simmons does the whole rewatchables type of thing? Are there any series that you went back and devoured it a second time, a full?
There
second
haven't
time?
been. I do.
Okay.
I do that like sporadic episodes of Seinfeld, but I didn't.
Okay, yeah.
I don't go from beginning to end. However, as my son is getting older, I will start doing that because he's going to want. So something I binge.
You can enjoy it together. You guys can scarf this up together. That's nice.
Exactly, and there'll be a lot of things I forget because you watch so much stuff. You're not going to. There's some you'll remember the big things, but there'll be a lot of little stuff along the way. But during COVID, actually, I binge watched Walking Dead, and I was never a zombie guy, but I love that show, and I love all the spinoffs and all that stuff. So my son wants to watch it, but I feel like he'll be too scared. He says he wants to watch it. I think it's a little too scary for him. So I'm going to wait another couple of years, maybe till he's like 13, 14 years old. But also, like, he's going to want to see Breaking Bad eventually. I want him to see The Wire when he gets a little older.
Oh, that was tremendous.
I mean, that's another show I binged. And then there's a show, I don't know if you watched this one on Amazon Prime called The Boys. You ever heard of this show?
I have not seen that. I've obviously seen it advertised. But
and that's a show that he would love, but it's not appropriate for a 10-year-old. So, when he's 15, we'll watch it. So, yeah, I will do that. But I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I have done that. No.
Okay, I would say, maybe top 3 or 4 of my favorites of all time. Sopranos, it goes without saying. Breaking Bad, The Wire. I mean, for me, I just watched the whole season of Hijack.
Was that
Idris
good?
Elba. I loved it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, Adam. I thought it was spectacular. And,
I gotta watch.
I had
to
wait for it. I had to go. You had to go hour every week. The episode, so it was like old time TV. I can't wait till Wednesdays when the episode comes out.
It's funny. It's funny because my wife and I started the first episode, and she was like, we were in bed, right before going to sleep. She's like, this is too tense. I can't watch this.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of forgot about it. And somebody mentioned it to me this week. And now you mentioned it again. I'm like, you know what? Because at the moment, there's not a ton of good shows right now. Yeah. This is like August is a weird month for TV. Even nowadays, it's a weird month. It's not, although I just started. Did you watch Justified when that was on FX back in the day? Or no?
I did not. No, I did not.
Okay. Because there's like a sequel show with that character and the show about the Lakers.
I gobbled that up. I loved how creative they portrayed each character. I know there was a lot of kerfuffle last year about Jerry West's character and all of that, but I just think the guy that plays Kareem is fantastic. Awesome. I can just see Kareem.
I know, and the guy who plays Magic is great.
And the guy who plays Magic is great, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, acclaimed actor playing Jerry Buss is spectacular. Yeah, and the cool thing, like a show like The Wire. We were introduced to so many iconic characters, and of course, Idris was one of the. Sure. I guess he was doing an interview recently saying that he didn't really. I think he was on Smartlist with those 3 actor guys. Yeah, and he didn't interview for his character, the character that he played. He interviewed for another one, and then they basically said, "Oh, you're going to be this guy," and it worked out because I think we found out what an amazing actor.
Oh yeah, Michael B. Jordan was on that at a young age.
Michael B. Jordan, yes. Great show. Who was the one actor? He passed away in the
I can't think of his name. The real actor.
He was.
He was the best. I thought he was the best one on the show.
I would agree with you on that. He just brought so much reality to it.
And the guy who played McNulty's partner, I can't think of that actor's name. But
Italian guy, obviously, Brooklyn guy, I think. Dominic something.
Yeah, him. But no, the guy who played his partner.
Please. Okay.
He's also in Jack Ryan. Oh, I can't think of his name.
I know you're talking about. He was just in. Yeah, he was just in. African American guy, kind of heavy set guy.
Yes, he's awesome. I love that guy. And I can't think of his real name, but he's awesome in everything he's in.
All right, let's get to the Silo Silo, the series. Here's my metaphor. Silo is Cleveland Indian fans underground for 100 years trying to get to the World Series and win the damn thing. And this whole series is about, and they've had one season, and they're more than likely going to be a second season. These people are designated to live underground in these silos that go like 150 stories down or whatever. And then there's bad guys. I thought it was ironic that Tim Robbins is in there, a guy who made one of his obviously biggest things in his career was being in an iconic movie about being in prison.
That's right.
And that's basically all these people are in prison trying to see what is out there. What do you make of that series?
I thought it was, I had no expectations going in. And a lot of times I feel like if you have no expectations for a show and it's good, then it really blows your mind, which it did. And that was a show we had to wait a week. I think it was 10 episodes.
Yep. It was.
I thought the way the show started and then where it ended was not what I thought was going to happen. There were a lot of twists and turns and surprises along the way. And the characters in the beginning, the first episode or two, that seemed to be the stars of the show. I don't want to give away too much for those who haven't seen it, but it turns out they're basically not the stars of the show. So it was so fascinating how they did that. You thought these are the main characters. Well, no, they're not the main characters. You just thought they were. And I think there's a lot of metaphors. I love the baseball metaphor with the Guardians, but there's a lot of metaphors of that show with our society in general. The people on the bottom. Yeah. And they can't make their way up. It's hard to make their way up. And the people on top think they're like animals on the bottom. And I think it says a lot about like our society here in America. And there's a lot of things that kind of match up the way people are treated,
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think, I never, have you ever seen the actress that is the lead in this? I don't think I've seen her in anything else before.
No. Nope.
Was that her biggest breakout role? I would assume, but I see, that's part of a series based off of a book,
Right.
And so, there's potential for them to have several seasons on it. And they did leave things open, at the end of this one. So look forward to season 2. But I just think the way, the sets, how they constructed everything, just that I had that claustrophobic feeling watching it just about every episode.
100%. 100%. Yes. It was like, get me out of here. Right. I mean, like, how can you live like this? By the way, I'm looking at the actress. Her name is Rebecca Ferguson.
Ferguson.
Yeah, yes. She's Swedish. And apparently I'm like, have I seen any of these things that she was in? All the other TV shows. She hasn't been acting for that long, basically. She's only worked regularly for about 10 years. Okay. But most of the other stuff she's been in, I haven't seen. And she probably played very small roles in a lot of these things. She was in the Dune movie, which was really good on HBO.
Okay.
But I don't remember her because I'm guessing she didn't play a significant role. I don't know. Maybe she did. But there's nothing else really I've seen from her. Huh. I also like the guy that played Billings. I think his name is Chinaza Uche. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name.
Like her the deputy, if you mean.
Yes, the deputy. I thought he was
her sidekick, if you will. I thought he was great. Tim Robbins is Tim Robbins. Common, I said, why don't we just get Morgan Freeman to play that role? That we could have Morgan Freeman, Tim Robbins,
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
But nobody wants to leave prison.
No, yeah, right. Exactly. That would have been funny if he had been in it. Yeah. But Common was good. Common was good in it too.
So there's just so much potential, and getting to you saying that Ferguson is a Nordic woman, if you will.
Yeah,
I've been watching a lot of shows that most of them have Scandinavian origins to them, and I don't mind. Do you watch a series? Do you ever watch series where it's just subtitles and stuff like that? I don't mind it at all if it's good. If it's good acting and it's good story plot line, why not?
Yeah, I got no problem. There was that series of 3 movies that I think took place in Sweden a few years ago. I can't even remember the names. They were based on books too that had subtitles. And of course, the movie, the show that was really popular last year. I don't know if this is up your alley, John, but Squid Game certainly.
Okay, well, I knew the phenomenon of it.
Yeah, well, that I actually watched it with dubbing and not subtitles. But I don't mind. It was a great show that had subtitles was Narcos. Did you watch that?
Okay. All of them, every one of them. Yes. I love Pedro. I think Pedro is fantastic. And his most recent thing with the apocalyptic show.
Last of Us. Great show.
He's tremendous. I really love Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. And so that had subtitles too. And it doesn't, but there was another show on Amazon Prime. It was just one season. It was called 000 about the drug trade that I don't mind subtitles at all.
Do you like just documentaries? what's one that kind of comes to mind? Well, Tony Hawk had one, and of course, Shaun White. There's been one. I eat those up as long as they're not 15 episodes or what have you. Yeah, I would love to. I want to dive into this one that Ethan Hawke produced on Paul Newman and Joanne. And I hear it's really good. I haven't seen it yet.
I hadn't heard about that one. That sounds interesting to me. There's one coming out today on Netflix about Johnny Manziel, which even though I've got to see can't stand him, I've got to watch it. The quarterback documentary on Netflix was 8 episodes. It was a lot, but it was great. I thought that was fantastic. The Michael Jordan, one, The Last Dance was great. I know this has been out a while, but I only watched it in the last month. The what do you call it? Convicts versus what was it called? The one about Miami Notre Dame. Cons versus Catholics versus convicts. That's
convicts and the Catholics.
Yeah, that was great. I hadn't seen that. I love. I mean, especially sports documentaries. I love if it's a subject I'm interested in.
I guess also it's kind of apropos that we're talking about this today. I think either last night or tonight. Hard Knocks, the Jets. Their first episode comes out, and I think that I really liked how the quarterbacks did that genre more so than what you see in the Hard Knocks formula, if you will, because you really got the personality. You came to like Patrick Mahomes.
I thought it was much better. I thought it was much better than Hard Knocks. Yeah. And I'm kind of sick of Hard Knocks. I loved when the Browns were on it because it was it was fun for us, but
you talk about it.
I'm kind of sick of Hard Knocks at this point. I think quarterback was much better, and now it's like, who I want next year. I want to see Joe Burrow in the Mahomes role, and I want to see. Most importantly, I want to see Baker Mayfield in the Mariota role. That's what I want to see.
Because they have like a veteran guy that's like not flashy. That's Kirk Cousins. Right. They got the best in the game, and then so Joe Burrow would easily do your Pat Mahomes thing. And then, as you said, the other one was Mariota versus Cousins. That could be that could be our buddy, Mr. Baker Mayfield. I don't know because they're not saying who's doing it, right?
I know.
It's like we don't know who's doing the show. It's like so-and-so turned it down, such and such turned it down. Well, we don't know if they actually were even offered it. It's kind of just fanning the flames of interest towards the show. Peyton Manning is a very bright man.
Oh, man, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. And for the Cousins role, you could probably go with either maybe Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr or maybe Russell Wilson. I don't know. Yeah, that could fit there. Maybe we'll see.
Well, I know one guy you wouldn't want there, and this is not a knock on the Browns, and it's not low hanging fruit. You just wouldn't want to have Deshaun Watson.
No,
what's hanging over him anywhere near that show. And the Browns, if they were ever asked for him to do it, I wouldn't think the Mannings would even think about asking.
No.
They wouldn't want anything.
That's something.
To do with that. They wouldn't.
That's something that maybe 5 years from now, if he's there's some sort of redemption tour or something, maybe. Right. But not certainly not now. No, I'm with you there.
Well, big guy, I have monopolized a lot of your time today. It's been
good, John.
Great. It's been a thrill talking to you about not just obviously the Guardians, which is the point of the show, but also, love having you on the Press Play Podcast Network, and you're outstanding all around broadcaster. So it's so fun to get your takes on TV and popular culture and all those sort of things. So I look forward to chopping it up with you again in the near future. I wish you nothing but the best, Bull, and thanks again for coming on with me, my man.
Thank you for having me on, John. Anytime. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be with you.
Thank you very much to Adam the Bull. We'll talk TV on another podcast in the future. And there's so many outstanding shows that are out there streaming and otherwise. And I just enjoy getting my mitts around one show and then really developing a taste for the characters and the character arcs and all of those types of things. So good to chat some silo with Mr. Adam the Bull. The Toronto Blue Jays took that first game of the series. Then, of course, they will play Game 2 tonight, 7:10 at Progressive Field, followed by a Wednesday night affair. And then on Thursday afternoon, the Guardians will be taking on the Blue Jays in a 1:10 baseball contest. And then after that, they head to Tampa Bay and then down to Cincinnati. So again, 5.5 games out of first does not look promising in the least for your Cleveland Guardians. Thanks very much for listening, gang. I'm going to sign off rather quickly here with this voice going. We'll see you the next time around on the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm John Telich. We'll see you the next time around.